Make its way back over water by tonight, becoming a tropical storm once again and then approaching the Louisiana coastline. As we go into Sunday night, of course, we do expect maybe some of those outer rain bands to start to impact the coastal areas on Saturday night, and then more of that rain spreading into the New Orleans metro and North Shore as we go into Sunday morning and throughout Sunday, maybe even going into Monday as well. So no big changes there, but it is continuing to be one of those things where we're expected to be on the east side of the storm, the nasty side of the storm, and we are still expecting quite a bit of rainfall from this. Forecast remains the same there, 4 to 10 plus inches. That means the flash flooding potential, even flooding potential, could become a concern. Coastal flooding also, lakes 1 to 3 feet, coast 2 to 4 plus feet, especially in those storm surge prone areas. Winds 40 to maybe up to 60 miles per hour, but that'll mainly be along the coastal areas, but we could certainly see some higher wind gusts, maybe a few isolated tornadoes. And of course, anytime you get a lot of rainfall and you start to deal with those gusty winds, you're going to start to see power outages. So one of the big changes is we do have a tropical storm watch now. It includes all of the viewing area except for the northern portions of Washington Parish, but it includes coastal Mississippi down towards the New Orleans metro. This simply means tropical storm conditions are possible within the next 48 hours. So we'd be looking probably Sunday morning is when our winds would start to pick up in the New Orleans metro, maybe a little bit sooner as you go into the coastal areas. And then as you go, talking about storm surge, we do have a storm surge watch that goes from Grand Isle up the coast, Lake Bourne, and then it includes South Mississippi going over towards Ocean Springs as well. So that is the latest on Tropical Depression Cristobal. We're going to continue this discussion over on Facebook, though. We do encourage you to go on over there. You can also watch on our app, but we'll continue to bring you updates and make sure you're staying weather aware and the latest with Eyewitness News.
From Channel 4's Eyewitness News, this has been your local weather expert alert, brought to you by Egan Insurance Agency.
All right, continuing our discussion here over on Facebook. We just cut in on Channel 4 to give a quick update. The reason we're cutting in and giving you a quick update is because we do have a tropical storm watch and a storm surge watch issued for portions of the area. That's the new thing as of this morning. Let's go ahead and start with that graphic. I'll just kind of detail where that watch is currently. It does include the New Orleans metro. It includes the coastal areas all the way down towards south of Lafayette. And it includes all of South Mississippi over towards Mobile and Baldwin counties in Mississippi. So your tropical storm watch simply means tropical storm conditions are possible within the next 48 hours. So we're talking mainly by Sunday morning. We'll start to see those winds pick up across the area, and those are going to be winds greater than 39 miles per hour. So gusty conditions certainly possible as Cristobal makes its way towards the coast by making landfall probably Sunday night. We also have that tropical storm watch. That includes areas from Grand Isle up through Plaquemine, St. Bernard Parish. It includes Harrison and Hancock counties in South Mississippi. And those are the locations where we could see 2 to 4 feet of storm surge coming in. You know, the low-lying areas that typically flood when we get these minor storm surge inundations. That'll likely happen again with this system. And we could see locations that are a little bit higher than 4 feet. That's not out of the question, and then that kind of just depends on where the center of that storm is going to go. So just something to be aware of if you do live in a low-lying area, down along the coastal areas, or of course down along the low-lying areas in South Mississippi. Going to have to watch those. Now getting into the lake, probably talking about a rise of 1 to 3 feet, but we will have that strong easterly to northeasterly wind at times, to southeasterly wind at times. So you could certainly see some of that coastal flooding right there along the lake, but going with 1 to 3 feet there, not currently included in the storm surge watch. The latest on the track as of 10 a.m. Not a whole lot of change except for a few things. They do have it becoming a tropical storm once again by tonight. The low pressure jumped well to the north. Notice it's moving at 12 miles per hour now, so this thing is finally moving after crawling for the past about 48 hours or so. So it's finally moving to the north. We're expecting it to become a weak tropical storm by tonight more than likely, and then it'll make its way towards the north, not strengthening very quickly. It's going to be a very broad system, meaning it doesn't strengthen very quickly. It also is going to be fighting a lot of dry air and a little bit of wind shear. So not expecting rapid intensification with this. This is not expected to be a major wind event at this point. But, you know, a tropical storm with 60 mile per hour winds is certainly possible right there along the coast, making landfall by Sunday evening. They did bump up the time just a little bit sooner, around 7 p.m. Of course, that could certainly change again. We're still over 48 hours away from this thing making landfall somewhere along the Louisiana coast, but consensus is it's likely going to make landfall somewhere in our viewing area, maybe from Morgan City down towards Terrebonne Parish, and then that includes going all the way over to Plaquemines Parish. So anywhere in there does have the potential to see the landfall. But we've been preaching with this storm. It's important to remember that the impacts are going to go far away from the center. So even if you are not right next to the center at landfall, we're likely going to see rainfall and gusty wind spread all the way along the Gulf Coast going into Florida. So main threat is still rainfall. We're still going with 4 to 10 inches. Now that 10 inches is probably going to be on the higher end. Will everyone see 10 inches of rainfall? Not likely, but it's not out of the question, especially as you get any of those bands setting up once the storm gets closer. Now, where those bands set up, it's impossible to say. I mean, you really have to wait an hour or two before it starts to happen to really understand where they're setting up. So rainfall is the biggest threat here, but it's certainly, water something you have to take seriously. Show you one of our models, and this model is kind of along the lines of the National Hurricane Center forecast. Notice where all the rainfall is with this. You've got your center of the storm clearly right here. This is actually right now the model showing. Here's the center of the storm. Here's the rainfall. New Orleans well to the north. This thing's in across the Gulf of Mexico. Excuse me. Pretty quickly over the next 24 hours or so. It will speed up. But notice as we go into Saturday morning, the rainfall's really to our south. We're still pretty dry Saturday morning. However, by Saturday late afternoon into the evening, we'll probably start to see a few of those outer bands creep a little bit closer to the coastal areas. We're talking Plaquemines Parish, the mouth of the Mississippi. And then as we go into Saturday night, Sunday morning, that's when we'll start to feel the breezier conditions here in the New Orleans metro and the North Shore, and that's when the rainfall will start to increase as well. But a very lopsided system. Notice there is nothing going on south of the center, really. There's not much going on west of the center. It's a very typical late or early in the season system with a lot of rainfall on the north side, and then kind of a dry slot here, and then more rain as you go down towards kind of a comma is what we call it. So that just shows you how unorganized the system is, but it can still dump a lot of rainfall. Throughout Sunday morning, we start to get in more of the brunt of the rain. We're talking more winds as well, maybe gusting over 40 miles per hour here in New Orleans and the North Shore, but the highest winds will be right there along the coast and out into the open waters. That's, of course, where you're seeing less friction that is with those winds. So the rain continues, the gusty winds will continue through Sunday. Notice the storm's not quick to move out of here. Unfortunately, it's not zooming on through, but it will be moving slowly, and then by Sunday night, we're still looking at the center of circulation, possibly in the vicinity of the area, still dealing with gusty winds and some showers, and then rainfall could kind of linger as we go into Monday as well, but it should gradually taper off after we get past your Sunday. So once again, looking at kind of the arrival of those winds, if you do need to, if you do want to get off the coastline, or so if you live in a low-lying area and you don't feel comfortable staying, of course you can drive, but the winds will start to pick up by Saturday night in the lower portions, really along the mouth of the Mississippi, down towards Port Fourchon will probably start to pick up, and Grand Isle Saturday evening, more than likely, closer to sunset and after sunset. And then it'll stay fairly breezy as you go throughout Sunday night or Sunday morning into Sunday night. Now notice they do have that kind of core of stronger winds possible. We're talking 59 to 70, it's not going to get to 73, but probably around 60 miles per hour in the orange there. So kind of closer to the center, you have this core of winds. That could certainly move into Terrebonne Parish, Lafourche Parish, Lower Jefferson Parish, maybe even over towards Lower Plaquemines. So something we'll have to watch for some stronger winds right there along the coast primarily. But as this moves inland, the winds have a harder time being as strong than what we see right there along the coast. So wind is not the main threat here. It continues to be the rainfall. And of course, if you live in a low-lying area, you're going to have to watch for some of that storm surge. Wind gust and speed, showing you this model really quick. It's doing a pretty good idea, we think. As we go into Saturday night, there's the wind starting to increase, maybe gusting over 25, 30 here in the metro. Saturday evening, gusting maybe 35, 40 right there along the coast, and then they will continue to kind of pick up or stay about the same as we go throughout Sunday morning into Sunday afternoon. So Sunday afternoon will likely be kind of the height of the storm going into Sunday night. That's when our winds will probably be strongest here for much of the area. Of course, how close you are to the center is going to determine, well, how strong your winds are. Notice this model has the center of the storm moving close by Sunday evening into Sunday night. Wind gust over 50 is certainly possible, and whenever you start to get winds up in this criteria, and with really wet grounds, you're going to start to see some power outages. I mean, that's just how it goes when you're dealing with one of these wet systems with some gusty winds. So something to watch out for. There are still a few uncertainties with this forecast. We'll close with this. The dry air. We talk about the dry air all the time, and sometimes it's not as much of a factor, but it's certainly going to be a factor in this case. Notice the huge contrast here between the moist air and the dry air. This is dry air. This is super tropical moist air. Here's the center of the storm. Now what's going to happen, notice you're already getting some of it kind of wrapping behind this. As this moves into the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to start to have more of that dry air kind of wrap up in it. And that can make the rainfall forecast a little tricky. That's why we're thinking not everyone's going to see that 10 plus inches. But if you are able to get under one of those bands, you know, you could definitely pick up some of that heavier rainfall. But we'll have to watch that dry air and see what impact it has on the storm as it crosses the Gulf of Mexico. It's difficult to say what impact it'll have until it's nearly happening. So by Saturday, we'll probably have a pretty good idea of what dry air is doing to this system. But it is expected to keep it from strengthening very quickly. So we're still just expecting that tropical storm. It does not look like we'll see a hurricane status out of this at this point. That's what the current thinking. So that is the latest, of course. You'll continue to follow along. We'll have updates, of course. Our next track and full update will come out at 4 p.m. this afternoon. We'll probably, hop on Facebook Live, maybe do an update on air once again. You can follow along there. But make sure you're following the entire weather team on social media. We do frequent updates. That's Dave, Alexandra, and Chris. And of course, follow us here on social media and download our app as well. A lot of good resources that you can track this thing as we get closer and closer to landfall, which is still expected to be Sunday night. So thanks everyone so much for joining in. We'll probably have our next update at 4 p.m.